The dimming star. Rory's fall wasn't just a stumble, it was a catastrophic plunge from the glittering heights of Hollywood to the fluorescent-lit aisles of an electronics chain store. At 14, he was the golden boy of early 2000s television, the gap-toothed, dimpled heartthrob who delivered snappy one-liners on Sunset Dreams, the sitcom that seared his face into the besotted brains of millions of teenage girls. His mullet bounced with every quip, his surfer shorts and neon tees screamed carefree charisma, and his infectious grin made him the darling of network executives and tabloid covers alike. By 36, the mullet was gone, replaced by a close-cropped cut that did little to hide the lines etched into his forehead. The surfer vibe had been traded for a polyester polo shirt and a name tag that read, Rory, sales associate. The dimple remained, but it now seemed like a cruel relic of a life he could no longer touch, a taunting reminder of the millions he'd earned and lost. Back then, money flowed like water from a broken dam. At 14, he bought a Ferrari before he could even drive, parking it alongside the custom Humvee used to chauffeur him around L.A. Eventually, the 6-car garage of his Beverly Hills mansion didn't have room for all his luxury vehicles. The estate was a sprawling monument to excess, indoor and outdoor pools, a home theater with velvet seats, and a game room where he hosted raucous parties for his posse, a revolving door of hangers-on who laughed too loudly at his jokes and drank his liquor. His mother, who doubled as his agent, orchestrated it all, her sharp eyes glinting with ambition as she signed contracts and siphoned funds into accounts Rory never bothered to check. He was too busy moonwalking on stage with Michael Jackson at the Hollywood Bowl, trading barbs with late-night hosts, or hamming it up for paparazzi at MTV beach parties. Once, an A-list starlet, drunk on champagne and fame, giggled on a talk show that she'd take Rory's virginity if no one else had claimed it, a scandal that only boosted his allure. Fan mail poured in by the truckload, requiring a full-time staffer to sort through the love letters and glitter-dusted photos. His life was a whirlwind of red carpets, award shows, and after-parties where he was everybody's favorite sidekick. But whirlwinds don't last. By 17, the sitcom was canceled. His face no longer fit the adorable kid mold. By 20, his fortune had vanished, sucked dry by his mother's lavish spending, a crooked financial advisor, and his own reckless generosity. The mansion was sold, the cars repossessed, and his posse scattered like roaches in sunlight. He cut ties with his mother, her betrayal a wound too deep to forgive, and retreated into obscurity. Now, at 36, he lived in a one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint, scraping by on a salesman's paycheck that barely covered rent and ramen. The memories, once vivid, now tasted bitter, like ash on his tongue. They didn't comfort him. They mocked him. At the store, Rory was a curiosity at best, a punching bag at worst. His co-workers, many too young to have watched Sunset Dreams, knew he'd been someone but didn't care. The older ones, stuck in the same dead-end job, resented him, his faded fame a reminder of a world they'd never touched. They smirked when they sent him to restock shelves or clean the break room, relishing the chance to boss around a former star. Customers were no kinder. Some recognized him, their eyes widening with nostalgic pity before they asked, "Didn't you used to be famous?" Others mistook him for a look-alike, murmuring, "You remind me of that kid from that show. What was it called?" On rare occasions, a woman, usually in her 30s, clutching her heart and a memory, would gasp, "I had your poster on my wall." If she was attractive, Rory would flash his old grin, hoping for a date. But those moments were fleeting. His charm, once effortless, had curdled into something forced, tainted by years of disappointment. He had a new agent, a sleazy opportunist who dangled gigs like carrots, commercials for local sub shops or pet groomers. Rory always declined. He wasn't that desperate. Not yet. He clung to the dream of a comeback, a starring role in a blockbuster or a prestige TV series. A local ad would torch what little dignity he had left. But the truth gnawed at him. He wasn't cute anymore. His face, once boyish, now looked almost comical. His nose too big, his eyes too tired. He'd stopped growing at 15, leaving him short enough to be mistaken for a teenager from behind, a cruel irony that made him wince. His bitterness didn't help. It seeped into his voice, his posture, into every interaction, driving away anyone who might have seen past the faded star. Still, there were glimmers of the old life. A handful of die-hard fans still sent letters, which he answered in hand-long late at night, the act of bittersweet tether to his past. He also attended fan conventions, where washed-up sitcom stars signed autographs for a dwindling crowd. These events were a gamble. Sometimes they left him hollow, staring at empty tables while younger fans flocked to newer idols. Other times they were a lifeline, a chance to bask in fleeting adoration and pocket a few $100. When a convention in Las Vegas offered $250, a hotel room, and meals, Rory didn't hesitate. He packed a duffel bag and headed to Sin City with $30 in his pocket, hoping for a spark of the old magic. At the convention, a massive poster of Sunset Dreams loomed over his booth, his teenage self grinning down like a ghost. Fans recognized him instantly, their first question always the same: "Where have you been?" He never mentioned the electronics store. Instead, he spun a tale about retiring from acting to escape the Hollywood phonies, claiming he'd moved to the desert to write poetry and race dune buggies. It was a lie, but it painted him as a brooding artist with a wild streak, part Jim Morrison, part Charles Manson. Some fans nodded sympathetically, aware of the tabloid stories about his mother and advisor fleecing him dry. Others just wanted selfies, their eyes gleaming with nostalgia. On the first day, two women, chubby, dyed blonde, and pushing 40, approached his table, giggling like schoolgirls. They fawned over him, posing for photos with their arms draped around his shoulders. Then, in a conspiratorial whisper, they offered a threesome. Rory's first instinct was to brush them off. Where were the supermodels who once chased him? But when they sweetened the deal with $500, his empty wallet roared louder than his pride. He had sex for money that night, a first that left him feeling both soiled and pragmatic. The gossip rags wouldn't care. He was too insignificant now. Besides, he gambled the cash away at the craps table by morning, leaving him no richer, but no poorer. Emboldened, Rory started whispering offers to other fans, $500 for a private encounter. One woman, eager to cheat on her golfing husband, haggled him down to $300. She was ecstatic, confessing that he'd been her teenage fantasy, the blueprint for every boy she'd ever loved. Rory performed mechanically, his mind elsewhere, but her joy was palpable. Another woman, drunk and waving $500 in cash, pulled him to a room later that day. Each encounter chipped away at his shame, replacing it with a grim resolve. At the bar that night, a hotel detective cornered him, his voice low and accusing. "We know you're turning tricks." Rory denied it, sweat beading on his neck, but the detective had tapes and a proposition. Gigolos needed to pay a cut to the hotel, but he'd pimp Rory out for $1,000 a screw, maybe two, and he'd throw in a discounted room and an advertisement on a discreet website. Other faded stars were making bank, $3,000 a call for one has-been less famous than Rory. Rory did the math. $10,000 a week was not out of the question. The offer was a lifeline. Rory didn't even return to L.A. By Sunday, he'd pocketed $4,000 from convention hookups. The detective kept his word over the following weeks, lining up clients, middle-aged women mostly, but also an old lady who looked 80, a couple where the husband just watched his wife check off a bucket list item, and a busload of peasant-looking German fans who knew him from syndicated reruns. Rory felt like a machine, his body on autopilot, while his mind wrestled with disgust and relief. But at least it wasn't the electronics store. These people worshipped him, their eyes shining with the same adoration he'd craved at 15. The money was pled too, and he was starting to live in luxury again. Then the detective pitched OnlyFans. He said you could make a fortune, promising Rory could film from this upgraded hotel room, a penthouse, for a cut to the casino. Rory resisted at first. Porn felt like a final surrender. But the numbers were too tempting. He signed up, and the fans flooded in. His account exploded, a pioneer in a wave of washed-up stars reinventing themselves online. Fan mail poured in again, along with offers for private chats and custom videos. Rory had a menu of services priced like fine dining, and the digital liaisons liberated him from the burden of physical intimacy with women he found unappealing, women who, in all honesty, often filled him with revulsion. That didn't mean he abstained from real romance or passionate encounters with those drawn to his revitalized wealth. Nor did he refuse in-person trysts with his online clientele, so long as the price was steep enough and they sought him out. For these exclusive engagements, he set his fee at no less than $5,000. Yet, with his reclaimed stardom emerged a resurgence of unhinged fans, crawling out from the shadows once more. One online fan, a woman from Omaha, obsessed over him. She messaged daily, claiming they were soulmates, begging for his underwear, proposing marriage. Her intensity unnerved him, so he blocked her. Weeks later, she appeared at the casino, wide-eyed and clutching a suitcase, insisting they'd consummated their marriage online via cybersex. Rory laughed it off, then called the detective to have her removed. It felt like old times, a crazy fan to dodge, a story to laugh about with the hotel staff. But the next day, as he stepped outside to get a pedicure and go shopping, she was waiting. "I came to marry you," she said, her voice trembling with conviction. Rory snapped, his patience gone. "I'm not marrying you. Get lost." Her face crumpled, and before he could turn away, she pulled a pistol from her purse. "You took my honor," she hissed, her eyes blazing with a mix of love and betrayal. "No one's marrying you now." The shot was deafening, a single bullet through his heart. Rory collapsed, the neon lights of the casino blurring above him, his dimple frozen in a final, futile smile.